The sun shone brightly that Tuesday afternoon as Agent Taylor drove down Maple Street in his dark blue sedan. After 15 years with the Secret Service, days off were rare treasures, and he planned to make the most of this one by surprising his mother with a visit. He hummed along to an old soul song on the radio, the windows cracked just enough to let in the spring breeze. Taylor wasn't in his usual suit and tie today. Instead, he wore a simple gray t-shirt and jeans, comfortable clothes that helped him feel like a regular person rather than someone who protected important government officials for a living. His badge and service weapon were locked in the glove compartment, as required when off-duty, but his training never really left him. Even now, his eyes scanned the surroundings out of habit. As he pulled into the small convenience store parking lot, he noticed a police cruiser parked near the entrance. The officer inside seemed to watch him a bit too closely as Taylor stepped out of his car. He shrugged it off. Being observant was part of any law enforcement job. "Just need to grab some flowers and maybe some of those cookies Mom likes," he muttered to himself as he walked into the store. Inside, Taylor picked out a beautiful bouquet of yellow daisies, his mother's favorites since he was a kid. He also grabbed a box of butter cookies that always make her smile. As he paid for his items, he chatted with the elderly cashier about the nice weather. Through the store window, Taylor noticed the police officer had gotten out of his cruiser and was walking around Taylor's car, peering inside the windows. Something about the officer's body language set off warning bells in Taylor's mind. Thanking the cashier, Taylor walked outside with his purchases. The officer quickly returned to his vehicle but kept his eyes fixed on Taylor. As Taylor placed the flowers carefully on the passenger seat, he could feel the officer's stare burning into his back. "Stay calm, stay professional," Taylor reminded himself, the way he'd done countless times in tense security situations. He pulled out of the parking lot, using his turn signal properly and driving exactly at the speed limit. In his rearview mirror, he saw the police cruiser pull out behind him. For the next mile, the cruiser followed at a consistent distance. Taylor knew all the proper driving protocols and was certain he hadn't violated any traffic laws. The flashing lights came on anyway. Taylor let out a deep sigh as he carefully signaled and pulled over to the side of the road. He rolled down his window, placed both hands on the steering wheel where they could be clearly seen, and waited. His heart rate had picked up, but his face remained calm, a skill developed through years of high-pressure situations. In the mirror, he watched the officer approach. The man's hand was already resting on his holstered weapon, something that struck Taylor as unnecessary for a routine traffic stop. The officer's nameplate read Officer Daniels, and there was something in his expression that made Taylor's skin prickle with unease. "License and registration," Officer Daniels demanded without any greeting or explanation for the stop. "May I ask why I'm being pulled over, officer?" Taylor asked politely. "You rolled through that stop sign back there," Daniels said, though Taylor knew perfectly well there hadn't been any stop sign on the stretch of road he just traveled. "Sir? I don't believe there was a stop sign on this road," Taylor replied calmly. The officer's face hardened. "Are you calling me a liar? License and registration, now." Taylor nodded slowly. "Officer, I'm going to reach for my wallet in my back pocket and then for my registration in the glove compartment. Is that all right?" The officer didn't respond verbally, just gave a curt nod, his hand still resting on his weapon. As Taylor carefully reached for his wallet, he noticed a change in the officer's stance, a slight shift that anyone without tactical training might have missed. But Taylor recognized it immediately as a more aggressive posture. Something was very wrong with this stop, and Taylor had a sinking feeling he knew exactly what it was about. He had experienced this before, not in uniform, not when his credentials were visible, but on days like today, when he was just another black man driving through a small town where he wasn't known. Taylor handed over his license and registration with steady hands despite the knot forming in his stomach. Officer Daniels snatched the documents and studied them with narrowed eyes. A pickup truck drove past slowly, the driver's curious gaze lingering on the scene. "Step out of the vehicle," Officer Daniels ordered suddenly, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. "May I ask why that's necessary, sir?" Taylor kept his voice even and respectful. 15 years of high-pressure situations had taught him how to maintain composure when everything inside him screamed danger. "I said get out of the car," Daniel's voice rose as his hand moved from his holster to grip his weapon. "You think you're special or something?" Taylor nodded slowly. "I understand, officer. I'm going to unbuckle my seatbelt now and open the door very slowly." Every movement deliberate and telegraphed. Taylor stepped out onto the asphalt. The flowers he bought for his mother were still sitting on the passenger seat, their cheerful yellow petals a stark contrast to the tension hanging in the air. "Hands where I can see them," Daniels barked, though Taylor's hands were already raised to shoulder height. A couple walking their dog on the sidewalk slowed their pace, watching the scene unfold with concerned expressions. The woman pulled out her phone and held it up, clearly recording. "You think you can just drive through our town like you own the place?" Daniels stepped closer, invading Taylor's personal space. His breath smelled of coffee and mint gum as he leaned in. "Where are you really going? What's in the car?" "As I mentioned, I'm visiting my mother who lives on Elm Street. The only things in my car are some flowers and cookies I bought for her at the convenience store," Taylor explained calmly, even as his heart hammered against his ribs. Daniels scoffed. "Sure you are. Turn around, hands against the vehicle." Taylor complied, placing his palms flat against the warm metal of his car. He caught a glimpse of his reflection in the window, the face of a man trying to calculate his next move very carefully. "I don't know what's going on here, officer, but I haven't broken any laws," Taylor said as Daniels roughly patted him down. "Shut up. I'll tell you when you can speak," Daniels snapped, his voice carrying across the quiet street. More people were stopping now, watching from a distance. Someone else had their phone out, recording. The pat-down was unnecessarily rough, Daniel's movements aggressive as he checked Taylor's pockets and waistband. When he found nothing, his frustration seemed to grow. "Where is it? What are you hiding?" he demanded, his face flushed with anger. "I'm not hiding anything, officer," Taylor replied, maintaining his composure though a bead of sweat trickled down his temple. Daniels grabbed Taylor's arm and spun him around, pushing him hard against the car. The impact knocked the wind from Taylor's lungs, but he quickly steadied himself. "Listen to me," Daniels hissed, close enough that only Taylor could hear. "I know your type. Flash car, driving through where you don't belong." A chill ran down Taylor's spine that had nothing to do with the spring breeze. He'd encountered this before. The thinly veiled prejudice, the assumption of guilt based on nothing but the color of his skin. But this time felt different, more dangerous. Daniels wasn't just suspicious. He seemed determined to find a reason to escalate further. "Officer, I believe there's been a misunderstanding," Taylor said carefully. "I work in law enforcement myself." Daniels laughed, a harsh sound with no humor. "Right, and I'm the president. Let's see some ID then, officer." "My credentials are in my wallet, which you're holding," Taylor pointed out. Daniels flipped open the wallet he'd been gripping and shuffled through it with one hand, his other still pressing Taylor against the car. When he found the Secret Service ID, his expression flickered, surprise quickly masked by disbelief. "This is fake," he declared loudly, though uncertainty had crept into his voice. "Who'd you steal this from?" A small crowd had gathered now, maintaining a cautious distance but clearly witnessing everything. An older man shook his head, muttering something to his companion. A teenager nervously shifted his weight from one foot to another, still recording on his phone. Taylor took a slow, deep breath. He needed to defuse the situation, but Daniels was growing more agitated by the second, his grip tightening on Taylor's arm to the point of pain. "That ID is genuine, officer. If you call the number on the back, they can verify my identity," Taylor suggested, his professional training kicking in. "I understand you're doing your job, but there's been a mistake here." Daniel's radio crackled to life, startling them both. His partner's voice came through, asking for a status update. Officer Daniels ignored his radio, letting it crackle unanswered as he focused on Taylor. "Turn around and put your hands behind your back," he ordered, pulling handcuffs from his belt. Taylor felt his throat tighten. This was escalating too quickly. "Officer, I respectfully request that you contact your supervisor. There's no reason for handcuffs." "I said turn around," Daniels shouted, grabbing Taylor's shoulder and trying to spin him forcefully. Taylor didn't resist, but he didn't comply either, maintaining his balance as he spoke clearly. "I'm a federal agent. This is unlawful detention." A woman across the street called out, "I'm still recording all of this." Her voice carried in the quiet neighborhood, and several car drivers had now pulled over to watch. Daniel's face flushed dark red. He stepped back and unholstered his weapon, pointing it at Taylor's chest. "Get on the ground." Now. Time seemed to slow down. Taylor could hear his own heartbeat, could feel the warm spring air against his skin, could see the yellow daisies sitting on his passenger seat just a few feet away. His training kicked in automatically: assess threats, calculate options, protect life. "I'm going to comply with your order," Taylor said evenly, raising his hands higher. "I'm not a threat to you." He slowly began to lower himself to one knee. All the way down, face down. Daniels barked, his weapon still trained on Taylor. As Taylor carefully moved to lie on the ground, he noticed a small group of teenagers had stopped their bikes at a safe distance, their expressions a mix of fear and disbelief. One was frantically typing on his phone. More witnesses, more cameras. Taylor felt a strange sense of both comfort and dread from their presence. The asphalt was warm against his cheek as he lay down, hands spread wide. "Officer Daniels, I'm complying with all your commands. Please listen to me. I'm a Secret Service agent. My firearm is legally stored in my glove compartment with proper documentation." "Shut up." Daniels circled Taylor, weapon still drawn. His movements were becoming erratic, his breathing heavy. "You think I believe that? You expect me to believe someone like you works for the government?" The words hung in the air, clear in their implication, heard by everyone watching. A man in a business suit who had stopped his car shook his head in disgust, clearly understanding what Daniels meant. Taylor remained perfectly still, his cheek pressed against the road. He could feel tiny pieces of gravel digging into his skin. This wasn't the first time he'd faced prejudice, but it was the first time he'd had a gun pointed at him because of it. "My credentials are genuine. Please verify them," Taylor said firmly. Daniel's radio crackled again, more insistent this time. "Unit 417, what's your status? Do you need backup?" Daniels finally reached for his radio with his free hand, his gun still aimed at Taylor. "I've got a suspicious individual claiming to be federal law enforcement. Possible forgery of government ID." While Daniels was distracted with the radio, Taylor very slowly moved his hand toward his pocket. Inside was his phone with the emergency alert button, a direct line to his Secret Service team. They were in town preparing for a diplomat's visit tomorrow, staying at a hotel less than 2 miles away. "Don't move," Daniels shouted, noticing the slight movement. "I need to reach my phone," Taylor explained calmly. "I can prove who I am with one call. You don't touch anything." Daniels stepped closer, his gun now just feet from Taylor's head. "Next time you move without permission, I'll consider it a threat." The crowd had grown larger. Someone shouted, "He's not doing anything wrong. This isn't right." Daniels turned toward the voice, momentarily distracted, his weapon still pointed at Taylor. "Stay back. Police business." In that brief moment, Taylor pressed the emergency button on his phone through the fabric of his pocket. 3 quick pulses, the silent distress signal that would activate an immediate response from his team. He knew they would trace his location instantly. Daniels turned back to Taylor, his face a mask of anger and something else. Uncertainty. Perhaps he was beginning to realize he'd gone too far, that too many people were watching, that things weren't adding up. "Last chance," Daniels said, his voice slightly less confident now. "Who are you really, and what are you doing in this town?" Taylor kept his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his body. "I'm a federal agent visiting my mother on my day off. Everything I've told you is the truth, and in about 2 minutes, you're going to have proof of that." A siren wailed in the distance, growing louder. Miles away, in a secure hotel conference room, converted into a temporary command center, Agent Chen was reviewing security protocols for tomorrow's diplomatic visit when a red alert flashed on her tablet. The emergency system had been activated. Agent Taylor was in trouble. "We have a situation," she announced, immediately commanding the attention of the 4 other agents in the room. Taylor's triggered his emergency beacon. Agent Rodriguez glanced up from his laptop, instantly alert. "Location? Corner of Maple and Oak, about 1.8 miles from here," Chen replied, already pulling up a map on the main screen. A blinking red dot showed Taylor's position. stationary for the past 5 minutes. Vital signs, asked Agent Wilson, the medical specialist on the team. Chen studied the incoming data from Taylor's smartwatch linked to the emergency system. Elevated heart rate at 110 BPM. Blood pressure up but not critical. Rodriguez was already grabbing his jacket. He's supposed to be off duty today, visiting family. Pulling up local police channels, Agent Patel said, fingers flying across his keyboard. After a moment, his expression darkened. Traffic stop reported at that location. Officer has called in a suspicious individual with what he claims is potentially fake federal ID. The team exchanged knowing glances. They'd all experienced it before. The suspicion, the random stops, the disbelief that they could be federal agents. For Taylor, a decorated veteran with 15 years of service who had taken bullets protecting foreign diplomats, to be treated this way was infuriating but not surprising. Gear up, Chen ordered. Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was designed for situations where one of their own was in potential danger from those who should be allies. No sirens, no lights, no uniforms, just badges, credentials, and overwhelming authority. Within 90 seconds, they were in 2 unmarked black SUVs pulling out of the hotel parking garage. Agent Lee, the team's newest member, was making calls from the passenger seat. "I've notified Washington," he reported. "They're reaching out to the local police chief directly. Also contacted the county sheriff as backup." Chen nodded as she drove, skillfully navigating the afternoon traffic. "Keep Taylor's mother in the loop too, she's expecting him." In the second vehicle, Rodriguez was pulling up Taylor's personnel file on his tablet. "Says here his mother lives on Elm Street. He must have been on his way there when he was stopped." "What do we know about this officer?" Wilson asked from the back seat. Patel, sitting beside him, was still monitoring the police channels. "Officer Daniels, badge number 417. 3 years on the force. 2 civilian complaints filed in the past year, both dismissed. Any body cam footage coming through?" Chen's voice came through their earpieces. "Negative," Patel replied after checking. "Either it's off or the feed isn't being shared." Chen's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Then we document everything when we arrive. Lee, make sure your bodycam is active the moment we step out." They were moving fast but carefully through the suburban streets, maintaining radio discipline. Every agent was mentally preparing for multiple scenarios. Their training covered everything from hostage negotiation to de-escalation techniques, but this situation was personal. This was one of their own. 1 minute out, Chen announced. Rodriguez checked his weapon, then secured it in his holster. "Remember, we're not looking for confrontation. We extract Taylor safely, document everything, and handle the rest through official channels." As they approached a final turn, they could see a small crowd had gathered. Several people were recording with their phones. In the center of it all, they could make out a figure lying on the ground and a uniformed officer standing over him. "I see Taylor," Lee confirmed, using a small pair of binoculars. "He appears uninjured but is on the ground. Officer has weapon drawn." Chen made a split-second decision. Change of plan. Tactical approach. "Lee and I will make first contact. Rodriguez, call in local police chief now, we want him on scene. Patel and Wilson, secure the perimeter and manage the crowd." The team acknowledged the orders with calm professionalism, but there was an undercurrent of controlled anger. They had trained together, worked protection details together, risked their lives together. The bond between Secret Service agents went beyond mere collegiality. "Remember," Chen said as they made the final approach, "we represent the United States government. Whatever this officer has done, we conduct ourselves with absolute professionalism." The SUVs slowed to a stop about 30 feet from the scene, positioning themselves to be clearly visible to both Taylor and Officer Daniels. "Let's go get our guy," Chen said, opening her door. The 2 black SUVs came to a smooth stop about 30 feet away from where Taylor lay on the ground. The crowd of onlookers turned, murmurs spreading as car doors opened simultaneously with practiced precision. Officer Daniels glanced up, momentarily distracted by the arrival of the vehicles. His gun was still pointed at Taylor, but his stance had shifted slightly, uncertainty creeping into his posture. Agent Chen emerged first, her movements calm but purposeful. She wore a charcoal gray suit with a white shirt, looking more like a business executive than federal law enforcement. Behind her, the other agents fanned out in a coordinated formation that spoke of years of training. Federal agents. Chen called out clearly, her voice carrying across the now hushed scene as she held up her credentials. Secret Service. Lower your weapon immediately, officer. Daniels blinked in confusion, his gun still trained on Taylor. Stay back. This is a police matter. Chen continued walking forward, her badge clearly visible. I am Special Agent Chen, United States Secret Service. The man you have detained is Deputy Special Agent in Charge Taylor of our Presidential Protection Division. Lower your weapon now. The crowd had gone completely silent, phones still recording as the scene unfolded. A woman near the front whispered, "Oh my God, he really is Secret Service." Taylor remained perfectly still on the ground, but a small smile touched his lips. He knew that voice. Chen was one of the best agents he'd ever worked with, calm under pressure and absolutely unshakable. I can't just. Daniels stammered, looking increasingly uncertain as 5 professionally dressed agents approached with badges displayed. His weapon lowered slightly. Agent Rodriguez had circled around to approach from a different angle, his own credentials held high. Officer Daniels, badge number 417. I've just spoken with Chief Thompson of your department. He's on his way here now and has instructed you to stand down immediately. Daniel's eyes widened at the mention of his boss. His weapon lowered further, though not completely. We're going to resolve this situation peacefully. Chen continued, her voice firm but not aggressive. First step is securing all weapons. Please holster yours now, and we can sort this out properly. The other agents had taken positions around the scene, some managing the crowd with quiet authority, others focused entirely on Daniels. Their movements were synchronized like dancers who had performed together for years. A bead of sweat trickled down Daniels' temple as he looked from one agent to another, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. Slowly, he holstered his weapon. Thank you, officer, Chen said professionally. Agent Lee will stay with you while I check on my colleague. She nodded to the youngest agent, who stepped forward to stand near Daniels. Chen approached Taylor, kneeling beside him without blocking the other agent's tight lines to Daniels. You okay? She asked quietly. Been better, Taylor replied with remarkable composure. Thanks for the quick response. Always, Chen answered simply, offering her hand to help him up. Taylor rose to his feet with dignity, brushing dust from his clothes. The crowd watched in stunned silence as he straightened his shirt and assumed a posture of authority despite having been on the ground moments before. Rodriguez approached with Taylor's wallet and keys, which Daniels had placed on the hood of the police cruiser. Your credentials, sir, he said formally, handing them over with respect. Taylor thanked him with a nod, then turned to face Daniels. The officer seemed to have shrunk somehow, his earlier confidence evaporated in the face of 6 federal agents and the growing realization of his mistake. Officer Daniels, Taylor addressed him directly, his voice steady and professional. I understand you were doing what you believed was your job. However, there are serious questions about your conduct during this stop. A police car with lights flashing but no siren pulled up to the scene. A heavy-set man in a police uniform with chief's insignia stepped out, his expression grim as he surveyed the situation. Chief Thompson, Agent Rodriguez greeted him, stepping forward to make introductions. The chief nodded curtly and walked straight to Taylor. Agent, on behalf of our department, I want to express my deepest apologies for this incident. Taylor acknowledged this with a small nod. I appreciate that, Chief. I believe we have some matters to discuss. The crowd was still watching, still recording. An older woman stepped forward slightly. I have the whole thing on video if you need it, she offered, holding up her phone. Thank you, ma'am, Agent Patel said, approaching her. That would be extremely helpful. We'll need statements from all witnesses. As the situation began to stabilize, Taylor glanced at his watch. His mother was still expecting him. The yellow daisies still sat on his passenger seat, a reminder of how a simple errand had turned into something much more serious. Chief Thompson turned to Daniels, his face a storm cloud. Officer, surrender your badge and weapon to Sergeant Powell right now. Officer Daniels handed over his badge and gun with trembling hands. His face had lost all color as the weight of his actions sank in. Sergeant Powell, a stern-faced woman who had arrived with the chief, accepted the items with a tight-lipped expression that spoke volumes about her thoughts on the situation. "Report to my office first thing tomorrow morning," Chief Thompson told Daniels, his voice low but carrying enough authority that several bystanders took a step back. "For now, Officer Reed will drive you back to the station." As Daniels was escorted to a waiting patrol car, the chief turned back to Taylor with genuine regret in his eyes. "Again, I cannot apologize enough for this incident. We'd like to take your formal statement when you're ready." Taylor nodded, his professional demeanor firmly in place, despite what he'd just experienced. "I'll come by the station later today. Right now, I'd like to continue to my mother's house. She's expecting me." Chen stepped forward. "Sir, the medical team should check you out first." Taylor shook his head slightly. "I'm fine, Agent Chen. No injuries." With all due respect, Wilson, the team's medical specialist, interjected, "You were forced to the ground at gunpoint. Standard protocol requires an evaluation." A hint of a smile touched Taylor's lips at his team's concern. "5 minutes, then I'm on my way. My mother's cookies are waiting, and they're worth more than any medical clearance." The tension in the air eased slightly as several agents smiled. The human moment wasn't lost on the onlookers, many of whom were still recording, but with expressions that had shifted from shock to something like respect. While Wilson checked Taylor's vitals, Agent Rodriguez organized the collection of witness statements and contact information. The crowd, initially hesitant, became eager to help once they understood the seriousness of what they'd witnessed. "I got everything on video from when he first pulled him over," said a college-age kid with green-tipped hair, holding up his phone. "He didn't do anything wrong. The cop was aggressive from the start." An older gentleman in a business suit nodded in agreement. "I stopped because I couldn't believe what I was seeing." The officer made several comments that were, well, they were clearly inappropriate. Agent Patel was taking detailed notes as he spoke with witnesses. "We appreciate your assistance. This will all be documented officially." Meanwhile, Chief Thompson was on his phone, his expression growing more troubled by the minute as he paced near his vehicle. When he ended the call, he approached Taylor again. "Agent Taylor, I've just spoken with the mayor. He'd like to meet with you personally to extend the city's apologies." And he hesitated, looking uncomfortable. "It seems this isn't the first complaint against Officer Daniels involving this type of profiling." Taylor met the chief's eyes steadily. "I'm not surprised, Chief. These incidents rarely happen in isolation." Nearby, a local news van had pulled up, and a reporter was already setting up for a live broadcast. Agent Lee quickly moved to intercept them, establishing a perimeter around Taylor. "We need to manage this carefully," Chen said quietly to Taylor. "Washington is already aware of the situation. The director called personally while we were en route." Taylor nodded, watching as the scene transformed from a traffic stop into what would clearly become a significant news story. His mother's yellow daisies were still visible through the car window, slightly wilted now in the afternoon sun. "Let the reporter approach," Taylor decided, "but I'll only make a brief statement." As Wilson finished checking his vitals, Taylor straightened his shirt and ran a hand over his face. Despite everything, he looked composed, dignified. "All clear medically," Wilson confirmed, "though I'd still recommend a proper checkup later." The reporter, a young woman in a navy blazer, approached cautiously after Lee had briefed her on the ground rules. Her cameraman stayed a respectful distance away. "Agent Taylor," she began, "would you be willing to share what happened here today?" Taylor considered his words carefully. What he said next would likely be broadcast across the region, possibly nationally. His training had prepared him for high-pressure situations, for protecting others from danger, but this was different. This was about standing up and speaking truth about something deeply personal yet, unfortunately, common. "What happened today reflects a problem that extends far beyond this intersection," he began, his voice calm and measured. "I'm a federal agent with 15 years of service to this country, but today, I was just another black man being profiled while driving through a neighborhood where someone decided I didn't belong." The reporter's eyes widened slightly at his directness. Behind her, the cameraman adjusted his focus. 3 weeks later, Taylor stood at the back of the community center as people filed in for the town hall meeting. The room was packed, with locals of all ages and backgrounds taking seats. At the front, Chief Thompson stood with the mayor and several city council members, their expressions serious as they prepared to address the crowd. "Never thought I'd be back here so soon," Agent Chen said quietly, appearing at Taylor's side. She wasn't in her usual suit today, dressed instead in casual clothes as she wasn't here on official business. Taylor nodded. "Didn't expect any of this when I just wanted to bring my mom some flowers." His story had spread far beyond the small town after the video went viral. National news networks had picked it up, and within days, similar stories from other travelers who'd passed through the town emerged. What had happened to Taylor had opened the floodgates, revealing a pattern that could no longer be ignored. "How's your mom handling all this?" Chen asked. A smile touched Taylor's lips. "She's proud. Worried, but proud. Keeps telling all her friends that her son is changing things." The mayor tapped the microphone, bringing the chattering room to attention. "Thank you all for coming tonight. As you know, 3 weeks ago, an incident occurred in our town that none of us can be proud of. A distinguished law enforcement officer visiting a family member was profiled, detained without cause, and had a weapon drawn on him by one of our officers." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew the story by now. "What happened that day has forced us to look deeply at practices within our police department," the mayor continued. "Chief Thompson has completed his investigation, and tonight we're here to share the findings and the changes we're implementing." Chief Thompson stepped forward, looking older than he had 3 weeks ago. The incident had clearly taken a toll on him as well. "Officer Daniels has been terminated from the force," he announced without preamble. "Our investigation revealed this wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a pattern of discriminatory behavior that had been overlooked or dismissed." A woman in the front row nodded firmly, clutching a handwritten sign that read, "Accountability Matters." "But firing one officer doesn't solve the underlying problems," the chief continued. "We're implementing mandatory bias training for all department personnel, creating a civilian review board with real oversight power, and revising our procedures for handling complaints." As the chief outlined the changes, Taylor felt a complex mix of emotions. The incident had been humiliating and frightening, bringing back memories of other times he'd been judged by his skin color rather than his character or credentials. Yet something positive was emerging from it, real change that might protect others from similar experiences. An older man raised his hand and was acknowledged by the mayor. "How do we know these changes will stick? We've heard promises before." It was a fair question, and Taylor watched with interest as the chief responded. "That's why we've invited federal oversight for the next 2 years," Chief Thompson explained. "And why we've asked someone with unique perspective to help guide our reform process." The mayor turned toward Taylor. "Agent Taylor has generously agreed to serve as a consultant to our department during this transition. His expertise in law enforcement and his personal experience with our failures make him uniquely qualified to help us do better." All eyes turned to Taylor, who gave a small nod of acknowledgement. He hadn't sought this role, but when asked, couldn't refuse the opportunity to create meaningful change. A young boy near the front, maybe 12 years old, raised his hand. "Mr. Agent, sir? Are you still mad at our town?" The room went quiet. It was the innocent, direct question that only a child would ask, cutting through politics and procedures to the human heart of the matter. Taylor stepped forward, considering his answer carefully. "I'm not mad at your town," he said finally. "I'm sad about what happened, but I'm hopeful about what's happening now." The boy nodded, satisfied with the answer. An older woman beside him, perhaps his grandmother, squeezed his shoulder with pride. As the meeting continued, Taylor stepped outside for a moment of fresh air. The evening was cool and clear, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. His phone buzzed with a message from his mother. "So proud of you. Your father would be too." Taylor smiled, looking up at the stars. His father had been a cop in the days when black officers were rare and often unwelcome. He'd faced his own battles but had always told Taylor, "Don't just complain about the system, help fix it." That's exactly what he was doing now, not because he wanted to, but because he could. Because his position gave him the platform and power to create change that might ripple far beyond this small town. As he turned to go back inside, Taylor noticed a young black police cadet watching him with undisguised admiration. Their eyes met, and Taylor gave him an encouraging nod. Sometimes change happened in small moments like this, one person seeing possibility in another's example.